Today we have a special guest. This special guest is a very, very treasured individual in our space. And if you've been around Black comic lords or Black superheroes forever, you have seen his work. I promise you. We're going to be talking with the Honorable Sebastian Jones. He is the owner and president of Stranger Comics. He has been involved in entertainment at an early age. He is from England. After leaving America at 18 years old, he founded the critically acclaimed MVP Records, globally releasing 25 albums, several years that include such artists as James Brown, John Coltrane, Marvin Gaye, Billie Holiday, and a client list that includes EMI, Capitol, Sony, WB, BMG, and Universal. He transitioned from music to movies when he collaborated with the filmmakers of the Polish Brothers, Twin Falls, Idaho, and Norfolk, as well as starring scenes in scores of national commercials. Jones wrote and directed the comedy pilot Cast Off, starring Scoot Maneri and Scott Disick. He then transitioned to feature writing and adapted several of his stories into comics and children's books. And when he founded Stranger Comics in a children's division called Stranger Kids, Jones now spends his time publishing, writing, and teaching the art of story and how to turn an idea from concept to creation without selling your soul to universities around the world. Comics and kid books to his credit include The Untamed, A Sinner's Prayer, Dusu, Path of the Ancient, Nada, Salvador, Ruining Christmas, Tales of Asunder, I Am Mixed, and I Am Living in Two Homes, and the latter will be part of a children's book, I Am book series, which is co-authored by Garcelle Laveau, with forewords from Halle Berry and Dr. Charles Sophie. The Untamed is being produced for animated television by Jones, Lloyd Levin, who did The Watchmen, Hellboy, and Boogie Nights, and Andrew Cosby, guns with the film Roman Studio. So our guest tonight has an extensive resume. And initially, I didn't want to read all of that, but when you have somebody that is legendary, you got to go through the whole bio. So, Mr. Sebastian Jones, it is an honor and a privilege to talk to you, sir. How are you today?
I'm amazing. Wow, what a warm welcome. What a warm welcome. and an older bio. I should update.
Yeah.
But no, I appreciate that. That's so very kind of you, very gracious. Happy Friday, guys. Happy Friday to the Black Comic Lords crew that are watching. Thank you so much for all the support over the years. I appreciate you guys very much.
Absolutely. So my first question for you, sir, is how did you get started writing fantasy and comics in general?
Wow.
How did that happen?
I started fantasy. Well, there's a two-parter, I guess. So fantasy, I've been writing since I was a kid, growing up in England. And I started fantasy. The fantasy I was writing was more so adventures and stories in the Dungeons and Dragons, D&D, and Warhammer and gaming I would play in. And I started to kind of in live action role playing and so on. And I started to create this fantasy world when I was a young kid called Asunder. And the most famous kind of character, who's famous now-ish, is character Niobe. And I started kind of essentially creating this character, romanticizing about who she was, probably as a young guy who could take on my vulnerabilities and my ambitions and my wrath onto her winged shoulders. And as I kind of grew, she grew with me. This is an image of Niobe right here. If you guys aren't familiar, that's what she looks like. And as I got older, I moved to America and I set up a record label. And after I wound that down, I started Stranger Comics. But before I did, I was starting to write comic book stories in and around the world of Asunder and this character Niobe and a lot of the other heroes and villains and gray areas in between in that world. and I was pitching different comic companies, and a lot of them, it just kind of felt like they were like, okay, this is great. We can use this as a Black History Month release, and it felt very kind of vapid and hollow, and
Yeah.
it had no depth of weight. They were just interested. It felt like in checking a box to please a shareholder or to please a moment. They didn't actually, and it was very surface, and they had no interest, therefore, in the depth of character, the storytelling. In addition, they didn't really give a fuck about the representation, excuse my language, but it was like more about the check in a box rather than the need for representation or the desire there or for it, or then the levels and layers within the storytelling, the narrative of the characters and what they were experiencing. So I was like, okay, I guess. So shout out to those guys. Thank you so much. Because without those guys, I wouldn't have started Stranger Comics, another company. I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to create, but I was exhausted after running a record label. But thanks to those guys, I needed to protect the integrity, the dignity, and the nuances of Niobe, and who she was, and who she would become. So that was why I got into fantasy and writing comic books.
So you brought up this beautiful land of Asunder. I'm just curious, where does the inspiration from Asunder come from?
Wow, it's a great question. I think it's an amalgam of all of the various things that have inspired me over the years. I mean, the obvious things are, we grew up reading Lord of the Rings. We grew up reading The Hobbit. We grew up reading a lot of fantasy novel writers. And then I think for me, I was very, being a mixed kid growing up in England, and then the area I was growing up in, it was very, I was getting to a lot of fights, I guess, or just, like trying to find what we hear a lot today, trying to see myself within fantasy. Sometimes I feel like that gets a little played out because there is representation for one to experience and feel and then discover. If you really want, you got, in comparison thereof, there's not a lot, but it's there. And I always want to honor the folks that have kind of gone before or that are around,
Right.
But if I was to just do a swath of, say, why Asunder and why does it look the way it look and feel the way it feels, is I was heavily influenced or inspired, I should say, by music more than anything. So I was moved a lot by John Coltrane, Alice Coltrane, his wife, I think was a big influencer on my spirit as a young man growing up, and finally believing in a higher power when I heard Alice Coltrane. Like certain things that kind of. I sound so very obnoxious saying all this shit, but is this real? Is it like these are my inspirations?
Yeah.
So music, I'm a 90s hip hop kid, so music, funk, blues, soul. At the same time, cinema was hitting really hard in those times of Spike Lee and Singleton. A lot of certain filmmakers were coming out that had distinct voices. And then growing up on spaghetti westerns and Kurosawa movies, so I was a huge Sergio Leone and Kurosawa fanatic. And then on top of that, King Arthur and all those various tales. However, I don't know if there's something I can pinpoint to say for me to be like, you know what, I'm going to set it in this region for this reason. It was just instinctive to tell stories within, I guess, if you want to say, certain aspects of the African diaspora that would create backdrops and landscapes where I like to play in the most and introduce a big world with the Scandinavians and the Europes and so on. But rather than what we see a lot of times in comics and movies and TV shows and things, like you get introduced into a big world through a very European lens. It's usually at an English castle or an English village or an English landscape or some kind of European kind of thing. And it wasn't by, I don't know if they think, I don't think I was conscious enough to do this shit by design. It just
Gotcha.
like, I want to create this story in this landscape and then dial each story in to have its own sense of self and have the backdrop be, really lush and realized and grounded, but it's still the backdrop for you to fall in love with the characters first. And if you believe and fall in, and relate to the characters, then the backdrop holds weight, right? So I don't think it was like, oh, you know what? I want to set it in because that's maybe no, it was not, that's a hashtag trending. I don't believe in any of that shit. So it just was, and here we are.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, the Stranger Comics catalog is very extensive. Let's say I'm introducing a kid to your stuff.
Sure. Okay.
Where do I tell him to start, or where do I tell her to start?
That's a great question. It depends on the age. I would say we have this book right here. This is the most famous one, I guess, that we have, the Niobe Shears Life comic. So this is a very all ages friendly book. And this is kind of like a Beauty and the Beast love story, threaded with murder mystery that leads to war. But it's also really about a young girl returning to her ancestors to try and find her faith. So it's very bright, very fresh, and very hopeful. So this is I had the honor of co-writing this with an actress named Amanda Stenberg, who was probably most famous for playing Rue in the Hunger Games and going on to do The Hate You Give. And I think she's going to be the star of a new Star Wars franchise, The Acolyte. But when we did, with Ashley A. Woods doing the art, it became the first nationally distributed comic book with a Black female author, artist, and hero in the history of entertainment. So we didn't realize at the time, but we were creating a bit of history, which was crazy to think, and kind of sad and bonkers. So we had a bit of a dream team though on the project, and then for video game fans of The Last of Us, the lead designer did that cover for us. So we were just experimenting and exploring. So that's an all ages friendly one that I would say anyone can read that.
Okay.
But if you're grown and you don't mind something a little bit more grown folksy, HBO-y, this is the first book that I wrote. It's called The Untamed.
Yes.
And The Untamed is a story about a man who's stuck in purgatory. And after 10 years, the devil comes along and he says, I'll give you 7 days to reap the 7 souls that murdered you and your family. The guy says, well, sign me up. And he returns to a one-horse town in a huge world. And as his memory comes back in broken shards, he realizes when he was alive, he was a bad man and maybe he deserved to die. But now he's on a path to save his family. On his path of vengeance, he meets a little elven girl called Niobe. And she reminds him of how old his murdered daughter would have been, giving this man a second chance to be a good man or a father, but he only has the 7 days. The kicker, what if she's one of the 7 souls he has to collect? And the devil set the whole thing up just to find. This becomes a story of would you damn your family to save the world? Because if Niobe can stay alive in The Untamed, she will grow up to become our world's Messiah. So that, honestly, which was the first comic I ever wrote, and that was very Kurosawa-y, very Sergio Leone, man with no name. So you think you're following this man's path of vengeance to redemption, and you are, but you're being introduced to Niobe's ascension, and she could be this man's conscience and maybe ours. So I was playing with a lot of different layers and in the themes.
Okay. Cool.
So The Untamed. The Untamed. Sorry, rambling.
Yeah, that's a great book. But let me ask you. You showed us a couple of books. covers that are amazing, that are iconic in our opinion. And the covers are all amazing. Every last one of them are amazing. So my question is this: because of the art is so amazing, do you feel that your readers or whatever may miss the writing that's inside the book that is great because they're so drawn in by this beautiful young girl that you've put on a lot of covers. Now there are other covers like Dusu, of course, but Niobe is an amazing character that I could easily see her, in mainstream animation or whatever. It's just something about it. But I'm just curious about the art. You put so much into the art. You have great artists that you work with, but I'm just curious. Do you hope that those that pick these books up, that they go beyond just looking at the covers and actually get into the stories that you're really, really trying to tell, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's the hope. I wrote it, so yeah, I'm hoping that people like the writing. But to your note, I think you're 100% spot on, because there are some times where folks come to our booth at conventions and they might want to buy some exclusives. They might want to buy just some art prints, and they might just not have any interest in the story or the writing. And I think sometimes in where we're at today, and I think we all know this, is it's very difficult to grab someone's attention, period, because people are on their various TikToks and social medias, and then within each social media they're figuring out new apps and new themes and new glitter and new this, that, and the other. And then you've got your video games, you've got there's movies, there's so much media to consume, and everything's bright and shiny. So with my writing, I've kind of done the flip, which is the criticism of my writing is I don't tell you everything up top. So for the folks that want a quick read and want everything up top, this might not be for you. But if you're more into, you want to kind of peel back the onion and learn the layers of the complexities of the story and the interweavings that we try and pull off and try and sound a bit poetic here and there, then the folks that have read it and seem to get it or like it, then they seem to fall in love with it and become obsessed. So I understand it's just a reality of where we're at in our society. Is some folks who see the art and go, "Oh my God, that's amazing," and they'll pick up and they'll try and read the first few pages and go, "Oh, I don't get it." But the art's great, but I don't get it, because I don't have the patience to want to know how to get it.
Yeah, because I'm an old time comic head. I'm a reader. So the world building, and that draws me in, and I just love all of that.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask you this. Now, I was introduced to Stranger Comics through Niobe.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she's very beautiful, very complex, dangerous, gentle but fierce. So who was the inspiration behind Niobe?
Oh man, it's funny when we got we were met with HBO. There was an executive there that asked me a very pointed question. He said, "Is the stranger you?" And I was like, "Yes." And we talked about it. And he says, "Is Niobe you?" And I said, "Yes, she's essentially my hope to be a better person." And she reflects not only my mixed heritage or whatever, but and the struggles of the wrestling between with that. I was very young when I created her. I'm 49 now, and this was like, I don't know, when I was 13, 14. So I think I just romanticized about. There was no one person that was an inspiration. I think it was more of a manifestation of romanticizing a savior type person that could save me from the shit I was dealing with at school. And and like I said earlier, like as I kind of grew, she grew with me, and she would evolve, and her conflicts would evolve. So essentially, Niobe's half elven, half human, but she's also half angel, half demon to reflect the duality of spirit that we share. So I think there's going to be some aspects probably of my mum in some areas, I guess, as a young chap. Idealisms within probably a woman I would fight for. I would want to marry. I would want to kill for. I'd die for. I mean, essentially, that's been my life. I've sacrificed my everything work wise, and I've risked it all. Financially, being an independent, like not one of these independent companies that are like, we're independent, but they're very Silicon Valley backed. Like, we're independent.
Yes, sir.
This is on the sweat of us selling comic books, and that's about it. We're indies, so Niobe, yeah, I'd say we've all kind of within our company, we've all kind of are willing to bleed, and for her to see her ascend. And I think in real time, Tamika, like to your question, she's evolved as I've evolved as a writer, but also peripherally and instinctively when I come into contact with young women at conventions or elders, or like Amanda or other writers or artists that you come into contact with, you can't help but be you want her to grow. It's almost like you have a kid and you see them off at school, and then you're still wanting to make sure they're okay because you know them best. I've just kind of been of a mindset where I don't want to have my mind closed off ever to her, and I think through her I get to listen to other voices, and so I think even with Niobe, She Is Life to She Is Death, it really was her. That was, I think, a lot was born from getting very frustrated with the realities of Black women being abducted, especially in this country, and it never being news and never being, not mainstream, and not this and not that. And I think, so that was a huge impact on that particular storyline. One I'm writing now with an actress, which I'm hoping to announce soon. We're dealing with a concept of tradition, and just because it's tradition doesn't make it good or right. Are we when we write these heroes and villains and in-betweens, are we able to have them evolve as we evolve as people? And
Right.
can we continue to question, can our characters question certain idealisms for us? So I think there's no one person to your question. It's more of a constant evolvement for her, which is exciting, and it keeps it fresh and honest.
Yeah, because we'll come to circle back around to the artwork, because the artwork
Okay.
is impeccable. The artwork is beautiful.
Thank you.
And of course, have you ever worried that most folks would think that your comics, your material, your storylines are too Black
No, I
because
don't
there
care about
seems
that.
to be of a anti-Blackness thread going around through the fandoms?
Oh yeah, I don't pay any mind to that shit. It's I I don't care. I think when folks get into any kind of art form, you're not meant to create art for a trend or to appease or please James Brown style. You're meant to kind of like, you're creating art that is true to who you are and your nature. I don't give a shit about a trend. You know, when people are like, because I've had on the flip, I've had people come out like, "Oh, you doing this because Black Panther came out?" Like, yep, 30 years ago I've been doing. I mean, like, do you know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
any kind of
Yeah.
trend. It's like by the time if you march to the beat of someone else playing the drum, then you're dancing to the wrong tune. You're dancing to someone else's story. You're not. And it's like I don't wait for another man to write my story. You know, because by the time people that are scared of trends or anti this or anti that, by the time they've caught on to the trend, another trend's come and gone. I just make sure I write the stories that are true to me and the characters, whether it's during a very pro-black moment or very anti-black moment. My shit's gonna be pro-black, and that's just how it is. You know.
How does the Untamed? I know you said it was your first book that you wrote, but how does that fit in terms of the chronology of the Asunder universe? Because we, like Tamiko said, I was introduced to Niobe first, and so in this story, she seems she's almost written from an unknown perspective, like we don't know who she is. So it makes sense, but at the same time, it's kind of like when I'm reading it and I see her, I automatically recognize her from the blue and the brown eyes that she has. So how does that fit? If that makes any sense.
Yeah, 100%. Well, it's interesting. When I wrote the Untamed, I wrote the Untamed before I wrote Niobe. So as far as for readers, when they first come to the website, chances are they buy Niobe first because it's the most famous and it's the title, the title it's character's book. But we do at conventions, when we do the pitch and we introduce people to the world of Asunder, and we do the kind of the run, everyone 90% of people buy the Untamed first because that's the one that they know they're meant to read first in what was published first, as well as age-wise for Niobe, you get to kind of read her storyline as this orphan in this town before you go on to the other aspects of the Untamed volumes. This two-hander in the Niobe solo title comes after. So sometimes it's just a bit of education. It's like, and again, we're super indie. It's like you go to anything, right? Where you go, if you go into like a Marvel universe, you go, oh, I like Captain America. Let me buy that one storyline and figure out where it fits in relation to an Avengers storyline or a team up, or and obviously they've got gabillions of comics and we've only got a few in comparison. And with indie, it becomes even more kind of myopic of focus, right? Where you go like, for indies, we actually have a decent for indies, we have a decent amount of a decent library of books. But it is a constant education of. I recommend you read the Untamed first. However, if you read Niobe first, that's okay. Like even the Dusu storyline, that takes place concurrently to the Untamed. There you go. That's the DMX right there.
Yeah.
And that's the story of Niobe's tribe, but people don't realize, and they don't have to realize yet, that's Niobe's tribe and her brother. We actually have a new comic coming out. I'll show you a beautiful new image of her brother Wasso.
Wow.
This is Niobe's brother. You meet in the Dusu storyline. They don't know each other exists yet, but they're about to. Actually, they do in the Untamed Volume 3, Issue 2. So for folks that are really up on it, they've actually just met and gone like, oh my God, I got a sister, I have a brother. So, and we have this is the new one we're dropping on StrangerCon November 5th on our YouTube live, featuring Wasso, Niobe's brother, when he's younger, way before. So just more storyline, more content for you guys to put the puzzle pieces together.
Amazing. Where does the poetry influence come from in your writing? That's clearly indie, Untamed. I just kind of I loved how you had the black pages and it was just 2 lines, because I'm a poet, so I identify.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So where does that come from?
At a guess. Okay, so if the real story is I I wrote the poem "The hand that paints, the face that laughs, borrows sorrow from my past. Fools in red have lain to bed, her smile, my name, our whisper." That was on the cover of the first Untamed comic book, and I wrote the storyline of the Untamed around that poem.
Hmm.
And then I wrote more poems per chapter. And even the title, The Untamed, the Sinner's Prayer, is named after the Ray Charles blues tune, Sinner's Prayer. Lowell Fulsom also had his was the original, but I'm a huge blues head. Like kind of like in the Luke Cage series, each episode is a hip hop track, I think by Gangstar from what I remember. Maybe it's
Right.
various hip hop tracks.
Uh-huh.
But Untamed Sinner's Prayer is named after Ray Charles' Sinner's Prayer. The sequel, The Killing Floor, was named. There's the Howlin' Wolf had a song called Killing Floor, but one of my favorite blues tunes is Skip James, The Hard Time Killing Floor Blues, and the brand new one is The Untamed Still a Fool, named after my favorite Muddy Waters song, Still a Fool. So just
Okay.
in the general sense, I'm just a music head, to be honest, Rich. So I
Right.
think
Okay.
instinctively, and I pretty much dropped out of like really working hard at school when I was 17. So I just think I don't have a clue. I think it's just a process of being a music head, and
Okay.
it just coming organically, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense for sure. You got a lot going on between the ears, my brother. What is your favorite story that you've written so far?
Wow.
Kind of like
I-
asking for your favorite child, huh?
yeah, yeah, kind of. I honestly think The Untamed, A Sinner's Prayer is always going to be hard to beat for me because it was such a a brutal reflection of certain aspects of who I am as a person, wanting to be a better man, and at what
Mhm.
lengths could I become a better? What lengths will I go to become a better man and a better father? And can I get there over the course of my life? And how many times do I stumble? Um, the new comic, one of the new ones that I've written, funnily enough, the one I wrote with Prentice Penny, the showrunner of Insecure, the new one, Niobe Endura,
Mhm.
I really love that storyline. And that's a prequel to The Untamed. You get to kind of you'll actually find out in that storyline um, how Niobe got dropped off in the town of Oasis. And we're nearly finished with issue 2. And you have it right, Tamika.
Of course, you know I do.
There it is. Yeah,
I
there it
know I
is.
do. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that storyline I'm really loving. And issue 2 of that, you're going to be happy because the entire first half of issue 2 is Dura telling Niobe how the world was built, how she created the world. So you're literally going to see the beginnings of the world of Asunder when just Dura and Vastar were two essentially godlings creating the world. So yeah, I'm kind of geeked out for that. So lots.
Yeah.
I enjoy it all. I think they're all kind of full of moral dilemmas. I'm a big moral dilemma fan. Oh, and then one of the new homages we have for Stranger Con. We do have a couple new comic books, and there's our new homage that's dropping.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the
Me and
one.
Tamika were talking about that before we came on
Oh, you are?
tonight. That cover. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's pretty amazing. So let me ask you about a particular character, Deuce.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He's an outsider, but
Yes.
he lives among and thrives among where he is. So I'm just curious, how do you relate to Dusu personally? Because
Right.
you know, from the very beginning when I started reading Dusu, you want to pull for this guy because he's very humble, but he ain't no punk, but he's very humble.
True.
And he knows who he is. So I'm just curious, where did the creation of Dusu come?
I think that's a great question. So for folks that don't know, the Dusu in the chat, this is the trade paperback. Yeah, there you go. Look at that. Tamika's got issue 1. A lot of first appearances in that now. So Dusu is really essentially probably inspired by me struggling with the concept of I can kind of fit in anywhere, but I don't belong anywhere. Then now and again, being mixed or whatever, at times you're reminded, sometimes through innocence or honesty, so in a nice way, sometimes, like with not meaning to offend, sometimes you're reminded meaning to offend, like with extreme prejudice, right? So so I think the concept for me is really, how does one, knowing he doesn't necessarily belong, still try and fit in and remain humble? But if you push me, or to such a degree, I'm holding the beast back. And I think so. My favorite character when I was growing up was the Incredible Hulk, because I was a very skinny dude and very I'm just a nice guy, and easy to get picked on being a skinny nice guy. And it was very much but I had a very bad temper. If once the temper went, it was a very bad temper. So I think it also plays to the concept of man's struggle with his ego and feeling, do I need to prove myself? And who am I proving myself to? My God, my own spirit, this chick I fancy, the people around me, my family or my adopted family. Who am I needing to prove myself to within that I am not a punk? Because I think that always comes into the interesting plays of the concept of cowardice, right? Where if you fight a guy that's talking shit to you, right? Does that make you brave, or does this make you a good fighter, or that just if you can whoop someone, or what is it more brave to walk away? What layers do we have when it comes to just the concept of dealing with man's ego? And I think for me, and fear of, is it fear of the fight or fear of feeling like a punk? Fear of the perception of cowardice at times, I think, drives us to do the irrational. Like how far are we willing to go to get respect? Do we come out of our own character and make certain mistakes? And I think those are the types of things with Dusu that he wrestles with, that I've probably wrestled with, like a lot of people have. And then also just on the man out of place shit, it's always like a white dude raised by some people, like Tom Cruise is raised by samurai, Tarzan is raised, like Last Mohican, it's always like white dude raised by some native folk or some shit, right? And I was like, all that. I kind of want to just have a beautifully strong black man, human, raised by black tribals, and just play in, not look, it's like when you see something on the screen that's like, oh, that person's Chinese and that person's Italian, and it's tough to kind of get past the initial kind of surface look before we even get to the cultural differences, and the instinctively different aspects of culture. Like, here are two beautifully dark-skinned brown people, but one still doesn't fit in because he's not elven, hasn't grown up among the tribe. And I think we can all kind of, every kind of teenager at some point feels slightly irreverent, or like, don't talk to me, I'm so irreverent. Everyone has that kind of those growing pains to kind of get through.
Now, I didn't know that you was as deeply into the music
Oh yeah.
That was something new because I figured it should have came from these covers. So,
Right. Yeah,
so
those are some of our homages.
I wanted to ask what the inspiration was, but you've already given it to us.
Huge hip
But
hop head,
these,
man. I'm a
but
big,
these
big.
were beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. I think Lauren Hill was probably my last like schoolboy crush, you know. But yeah, I mean that was my jam, man. You know, one of my early early aspects of my life was spending every Saturday dancing, having dance off battles, you know, doing my James Brown slides. I'm a huge music head. And so people that come to, I do a Thursday live on Instagram every week, and oftentimes I'm playing tracks. So if there's a famous track in hip hop, I'm often playing the original. So people go, oh, that's from so and so. And I just, yeah, big music head.
Wow.
Yeah. So, of course, also
Thank you. Yeah,
comic
big
homages.
comic head too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
tell
a
me
lot of folks
a
seem
little
to
bit about
love
these.
the homages for sure.
All right.
We have a really also on StrangerCon. I don't have it like a prototype printed, but I have a really good Outcast dropping on StrangerCon homage, and we have a really good oh my goodness, another homage. I'm spacing on it. It's a Spidey homage, and it's epic. Um, yeah, just yeah, a lot of, and we have a Sailor Moon homage. I don't know if I have it handy dandy here, but yeah, our Sailor Moon one is really. Oh, and then we have, of course, um,
The blade.
the Blade.
That's a yeah, that's fire there, man. That's fire.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then we do some fun stuff too, like,
Okay.
Uh,
and I have a lot of other video game variants like Altered Beast for Dusu. I mean, I
uh-huh.
have a ton of video game variants, and what I found is with the homages, um, it's kind of a thing where people have an emotional connection during. It's like, oh, I had a breakup on that during that album, or I had, you know, look, there you go. There's our last homage. Yeah, love
Mhm.
that movie. Big fan. Great soundtrack. Speaking of music, one of the
Definitely.
best soundtracks.
Oh yeah, amazing, amazing.
Yeah. Had to show those because those were amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, and those are all like I think for the most part, like I tend to homage stuff that's been very impactful to me. That's meant a lot to me. Um, so yeah, Dead Presidents is just epic. It was epic movie. And those kind of the movies that when you're a young guy, they kind of they leave a lasting impression. And I think that's what we try and do with our comic books through the writing. If there's a line that someone can hold on to, and obviously through the beautiful artwork.
So there's a question that we always ask all the people we interview. How did
Shoot.
you find? How did you find the Black Comic Lords?
Oh goodness gracious. I think it was through Facebook. Was it through you, Tamiko? I don't remember.
It may have been me showing off the incredible covers from the Kickstarter campaigns.
I think it might have been you. Yeah, I think so. Let's roll with that.
Uh,
Thank you.
All
My
right.
next, my I have one request. If you
Mm.
guys are up for it, is you have a beautiful intro, beautiful backdrop. My request is if Niobe can make the cut in your Black Comic Lords homage of all the things that appear.
Oh,
Say nothing more. We got it. We
we'll
got you.
definitely
We
get in
gonna
there. All I gotta do is get our wizard on it, and she will definitely
yeah,
have
yeah.
a
Okay, awesome. Yeah, if you need any like JPEGs too, just hit me up and I'll send you whatever. You know, I'll always plug. I always plug my shit. You know.
Okay, well, that rolls into, I guess, our last question. What is next for Niobe and the World of Asunda and for Stranger Comics?
Well, next to Stranger Comics is StrangerCon, November 5th, YouTube Live. Come and get all the exclusives and the new Tales of Asunder comic featuring Waso Dusu. Niobe actually makes a guest appearance in it. I'm really psyched for that new comic to drop November 5th. We also have an amazing Patreon that's going on right now. If you back the Patreon for even just $5 a month, you get to read every single comic we have for free digitally. And you get 20% off the website, which is crazy because that will save you a ton on exclusives. So yeah, join the Patreon. Everything's on strangercomics.com. November 5th, our StrangerCon lives. They're usually really, really good. It's a lot of fun, great guests. We also partnered with Prentice Penny, the showrunner of Insecure. He and I formed a new comic book company together where we're actually developing 2 IPs to turn into TV shows, and one of which is Jason Wise, which one is Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer. So I'm producing that with Prentice. So if you guys obviously know Harriet Tubman, me and Prentice are producing that with David. And the other one we're developing into a comic series through Stranger and our other company. Stranger will distribute through our other, for our other company. And that is Jason Wise, created by Black Heroes Matter founder Urias. And he creates amazing, amazing characters, kind of like a Black Indiana Jones, James Bond type dude. However, he's an immortal, and he has the quick thing is he basically robs museums and takes the shit and puts them in the ancestral homes. And it's got a huge overall bigger arc, which I can't remember how much I can say about that, but that's just one aspect of this amazing IP that we'll be dropping. Well, we should be dropping the first issue next year. So lots of stuff to look out for.
Well, Mr. Sebastian Jones, it has been an honor. It has been a pleasure. Thank you for being so gracious with your time.
Thank you.
You are a beautiful spirit and an asset in our community. If there's anything you need, please feel free to reach out to us. You've been generous physically, and I can say that because I have books that you just sent me, and I was just so grateful to have them. So thank you very, very, very much. And that's going to conclude our interview. Guys, please, if you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Again, check out Stranger Comics. Mr. Sebastian Jones has the website there in front of you. Please go out, check out his website. And again, he lets you know about the Patreon. If you want them, you can't say you can't afford $5 a month. Stop that, okay? We comic heads, we spend too much money. So go out and support our movies. Sure, we really, really have to push those who are really doing big things in our space. And I know Mr. Sebastian's doing that. So thanks again. God bless everybody. We'll see you next time. Peace. We out.
Mm-hmm.